Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Nick Marks, Friday Pulse, FridayPulse.com, and Friday1.com. Nick, it's been great talking with you all week and having coffee with you. You got your coffee? Yeah.
Actually,
It's
I've got
actually
water.
after the noon for you. Yeah. It's actually, you're in England, I know. So we've been talking about happiness, just to kind of give everybody a quick summary. Friday Pulse tracks employee experience and helping businesses build a positive, productive work culture, measures happiness. You can go to FridayPulse.com and learn about it, Friday1.com, and take your own happiness test. But what I wanted to talk about today, Nick, are stats and how people measure happiness, and then how does that affect their bottom line and productivity?
Yeah. So let's just start with how we measure it. So we ask people on a 5-point scale, how happy were you this week? We do weekly because it respects the fact that happiness goes up and down. We have good and bad weeks. And the idea, happy, productive teams have more good weeks than bad weeks.
And so I would say, can I just comment on that for 1 second? Because I think, I think the way the world is right now, a week seems like a month. So it's almost like, it almost seems like we're in dog years. Do you know what I mean? Time seems to be going so quickly. So I love the weekly check-in. Okay, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I mean, actually, even when COVID struck last year, we had this huge dip week 1. And even by week 3, it was back to sort of 20% below where it was before. So you'd have just thought it was a 20% drop if you're measuring it just every month, but you see the big dip quickly. Anyway, so measuring it quickly is important because it gives you responsive data. But then we can look at how that impacts or how that predicts, because it's giving you a measure of how things are right now. But of course, what's amazing about what we feel is it predicts how we will behave in the future. Most people indicators in businesses are what we call lagging. They're looking back in time. How many people can turn up for work? This is a leading indicator, we call it, because it's now and it shows you how people are going to be, and because it motivates us. What happens to people's future behavior? Well, clearly people stay if they're happier. So we know when we look at our 5-point scale, if a team moves half a point up, that's a 17% reduction in staff turnover.
Wow. So half a point equals 17%.
Yeah, of lower staff turnover next quarter, the very next quarter. It's quick. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's 7% extra productivity. That can be measured in lots of different ways. I mean, you've got right from people who are doing work, which is just throughput. And if it's repeated, consistent work, the effect is lower. It's probably 2.5%, 3%. If it's creative work where they have to use their whole intelligence and how to shape their work, whether that's prospecting, whether that is client work where you always even think the figures are even bigger, they're 20%, even rising up to 100% in some cases. Because, if you've got a miserable consultant, they're not going to do good work, So, it becomes very, very important in that sort of more free moving space. It's also linked to lower absenteeism rate. People get sick literally less, and also they don't just not turn up. And it's linked to, as I said, creativity and innovation, in the sense that when we are feeling good, we can see the bigger picture more, we see how things connect. So there's a big connection there. And then you can get a whole list of sort of annoyances, like there's less conflict in teams when people are happier, pretty obvious. But HR, how much time they spend dealing with conflict, interpersonal stuff, that's a problem. There's less what they politely call shrinkage of stock, i.e. theft by your employees. Your machine time, if you run machines, they run better because people care about their machines. Yeah, I mean, that's literally, it's taken care of. So there's all sorts of goods in there. And it's a big effect. I think the return on investment on a well-designed happiness well-being program is probably 5 or 6 times every year what you've invested in it. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I love all of those stats. I appreciate you sharing. Let me ask you a question. We're seeing right now a trend with millennials being in more of a leadership position, Gen Zs soon to follow. And their way of leadership is different than the leaders of the 1960s and 70s and 80s and even 90s, right? I felt like in those times, it seemed like you could rule a little bit more with an iron fist and get away with it. I don't think that is, I'm curious what your studies are showing as far as, how people will deal and tolerate. It used to be, you went and worked, you stayed at a job for 20, 30 years. Now we're looking at stats post-pandemic, in April, 4 million people left their jobs because they wanted a happier place. One of the reasons they wanted a better experience. So how are we going to see that shift when it comes to difference in in the generational leaders?
Yeah, I see it that I think performance these days is much more coaxed than coerced. It's working with people all the time, and I sometimes say you don't own your people, you rent them. It's a rental agreement. So it's like, it's a different experience than when you own it, and so
right. And those assets leave every day, and you need to give them a reason to come back. So
absolutely, it's a sort of flow of services from them, if you want to start getting quite technical about. But and I think that we're moving to a much more facilitative management style, less prescriptive, more facilitative, more in a way. If you want to use a word from therapy, more adult to adult and less adult to child. And we're starting to work with people as people. I think that's great for the people's experience of work. It's often harder for the manager. It's much easier to tell people what to do. That's simple. Working with them is harder. And so I think what we actually have to do is to support the line managers to be better people leaders. And that's very much how we designed Friday Pulse. We very much designed it not to undermine line managers. Quite often when you get a survey tool, people are looking to expose where the bad managers and move them on. We're very much, how can we support whoever's in role be better?
As a business coach, I work with a lot of managers. I work with C-levels, leadership teams, salespeople, and I work with a lot of managers. A lot of managers were promoted because they were good at their job. They don't necessarily know how to manage people. That doesn't mean they're bad at managing people. They just need to be trained. But I think it's interesting you talk about that. I think people are used to tell me what to do, right? And to me, the way to move someone is to raise consciousness and to raise awareness. And in that way, you can't just tell someone what to do. It's a little bit of a slower journey, adult to adult. And I think so can you speak on that kind of evolution of thought? Like sometimes clients will say to me, just tell me X. And and it's like, well, I can't just tell you. I need to ask you. I need to take you on a path so you can get there on your own many times. And sometimes I can't tell them, but there's a mix of that. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit when it comes to happiness, when it, delayed versus instant gratification?
I mean, there's so much in there, but I'm agreeing with you that that the most powerful thing is to help people make it feel it's their own idea, isn't it? That basically you're helping them come to that conclusion. And what you have to be as a leader, you have to be prepared to be surprised. You might have got it wrong. In a sense, who's to say you've got it right? And actually what you find normally is a better solution. It's a better way of doing things when you work with people and you let them do it their own way. And there's normally, many ways to catch a monkey, we used to say in English, but but it's like, but it's many ways to do that. So, that there isn't only one way. I mean, obviously when we get to some things, manufacturing, there's a way you do it, but with most of the work that's done in sort of office-based, desk-based work, there's normally masses of ways. And it's like, how do you help them do it? And then they'll own it, because then participation in this is massive. If you feel you're involved and you're doing it yourself, you're much more committed to it.
You got it. I think today, if people aren't part of the process, part of the awareness, raising consciousness of whatever you're talking about or doing, and they, like you said, and I agree, believe it's kind of, they come to their own conclusion as if it's their idea in their world, they're not going to own it to the extent that they need to be glued to all the happiness elements that you're talking about. And I can't tell someone, be happy because we have a popcorn machine in the in the cafeteria, right? It may take me 5 hours to know that, oh, everybody here loves popcorn, so now I'll have a popcorn. It's I think it's a different way of thinking.
Absolutely.
I love talking with you. Tell everybody, when a client works with you, how does it work? Do you facilitate the Friday emails? Like, how does that work, Nick?
Yeah, so we basically, we do in a way prescribe a process, which is on a Friday, we ask people how they were, but then within that process, we allow for a lot of particular things from the team, like they write in what's a success for them, a thank you note. So we sort of, we structure the process, but the process, people's experience emerges out of it. So when a client works with us, they basically come along and say, look, we're interested in measuring, improving happiness. we basically set up a system that emails or uses Slack or whatever to contact all of their employees, puts them in teams. Teams every Monday get their own results. Senior leaders get results for everyone in the organization, and the system works by itself. We support them with that. They're larger with calls. Smaller ones, it's all self-serve, and it works. People not only get happier, but I mean, we've got a lot of clients that love our product, really, really love it. And they keep renewing. We don't have a problem with renewal. We have a problem with people not hearing about us, but not a problem with renewal.
Right. I love it. The most important asset, I think a lot of companies, and I believe in marketing and I believe in all of that as a business coach. I touch on all of it with my clients, but I love what you do because you're all about investing in the happiness of the internal human beings, adult to adults that work, as you said it, that work in the business, and giving them more happiness, which gives them so many benefits outside of work. And I love it. I love what you guys do. FridayPulse.com. Nick, I appreciate you as always. We'll finish up the week tomorrow, and Think Community. If Nick can help you, Nick Marks, Friday Pulse. Check him out on LinkedIn or FridayPulse.com. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.